Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. As you may or may not know, throughout the past videos I've made, you may assume that I am a Dragon Ball fan. Well, I am. However, what you may not have known is that I am a Bleach fan. And a big one at that. And it all started around 2008. Unfortunately, this was during the bound arc in the US, but this was definitely the period of time where I started watching Bleach. And I was definitely sneaking late at night on Saturdays when I wasn't supposed to watch Adult Swim. Because this show was the coolest thing to watch growing up. If it wasn't the music, the atmosphere, the world, the art style, the action, and the characters, and especially Ichigo as a protagonist. You see that man right there? That's the GOAT. And these aspects really made me fall in love with the series growing up. But sadly, in terms of games, we did not have that much in the West compared to the Naruto and Dragon Ball games. Hell, the last console game that we got for Bleach was Soul Resurrection. And that was in 2011. And that was when the anime was wrapping up in Japan. That was when the Hellverse movie was dropping soon. And you want to know where the English dub was at? At the Zanpakuto arc. Oh god, we were very behind. But in short, we didn't have a console game for over 14 years. But that all changed in 2025 when Bleach Rebirth of Souls dropped.
Yeah, let's go!
You know what? I'll just be blunt and honest. I love this game. It is easily one of my favorite anime licensed fighting games that we have gotten in a long time. And excluding these 3 gems that I really like right here, this one really hits for me. It's not perfect. Oh, it certainly has its flaws, and trust me, we are definitely going to address them. But I really do want to speak my 2 cents on this game and just express how I feel. So let's have a dialogue, shall we? So I'm sure we all know that Bandai is publishing this game. Hell, they got an entire monopoly of all the popular anime IPs. But who is developing this game? Well, it's no other than Tamsoft, the people who are behind Captain Tsubasa, the Rising New Champions, and some of the Hyper Dimension Neptunia games, or the hack and slash ones at least. But their most notorious and popular IP in their lineup is the Senran Kagura series. And if you know, you know.
And if you will, look right here.
And they mainly lean towards the hack and slash genre and also sex appeal. But come to find out that in the 90s, they actually made a 3D fighting game called the Battle Arena Toshinden series back on the original PlayStation. And hell, it was successful enough to get 4 games. And oh goodness, I can see why. But this really piqued my interest because you get these devs to work on a Bleach game. I'm immediately curious how this is going to go. But what is Tamsoft going to do to make this game stand out? And not for the obvious reasons. But as I was going through the interviews and just going back looking at the trailers, the main concept that they push for Rebirth of Souls is to accept your soul and to reverse fate. And they even go into detail, deep dive into how they want to create the characters in Bleach, how unique each character's moveset, bankai, and skill set, and the things that they offer. And they really want to incorporate that in a video game. They also took some notes and references from other Bleach games and different fighting game subgenres that, for me at least, it seemed like Tamsoft were very confident and passionate with what they want to make in terms of creating Rebirth of Souls. The overall concept for the game seemed pretty cool, but how is it like in practice? The best way I could describe the gameplay for Rebirth of Souls is, well, it's unique. I can't really say I played anything similar to it before. Sure, it's an arena fighter, and for those who think I'm crazy and say that it is or isn't, well, the game does call itself a battle action game. So technically, it is an arena fighter. However, it does share some elements that are in traditional fighting games and sometimes even a 3D fighter. It almost feels like a hybrid between the two. But how does the game work? Hell, if you show an average person the gameplay for Bleach Rebirth of Souls that never touched a fighting game or arena fighter before, I mean, look all the health bars and numbers and the things that are just going on. It can get a little bit overwhelming. And it also doesn't help that there's Bleach terminology involved. So you hear things like Kikon and Reishi and whatnot. Mind you, the terminology is cool because, I mean, it kind of brings the identity to the game that, oh yeah, this is a Bleach game, but I know it can be a little confusing for some people. So I'm gonna try to make it as easy as possible. Alright, let's start with your button layout. Your controls, you do have a quick attack. You also have dashing quick attacks, which involve you pressing the dash button into a light attack. You also have special flash attacks. Almost like your tilts have your flash attacks, which are essentially your heavy attacks. And you also have signature moves, which vary from character to character. You also have your step or your dash, which is pretty much going to be your movement button. Then you have your keycomb, which is pretty much going to be your knockdown tool to push the opponent away from you after a combo or conversion. And sometimes you will be using it to take the opponent's stock gauge if the right conditions are met. Then you have your breaker. Oh, sweet Jesus. It is a universal, unblockable tool that everyone has. And it is also a combo starter. We'll go more into that a bit later, but just know this button, oh, it's dangerous. Then you have your spiritual pressure moves, which is essentially your moves that cost meter. You also have a guard button. You also have a button that's dedicated to flash steps, reverse actions, and awakening, which I will go in more in detail later. When it comes to the movement of Rebirth of Souls, I will admit it is much slower compared to most arena fighters that we have on the market, but I don't necessarily think that is a bad thing. I don't really mind slow-paced fighters. Consider, hell, my favorite fighting games, they are a bit on the slow side. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's not for everybody, and that's not a bad thing. People have their own opinions or feeling when it comes to a movement in a fighting game. Now, for Bleach, I will say this, there'll be moments where, I'm not gonna lie, it does feel a little clunky, but when you get used to the movement, especially with your character, since again, movement is different across the board with most of the cast characters, not everybody's gonna have the same speed, but that moment where you whiff punish somebody or you shimmy somebody and you get that right hit in, oh man, dude, it feels good. I'm not gonna lie, it feels great. And the benefit of having a slower fighter is that you have a lot more time to think about your actions or just plan what you're going to do next. I think that's probably one of the biggest things to do when it comes to a slower paced game. You definitely have to consider your options sometimes when you're in the neutral. I think my only small gripe with the movement, to me in my opinion, I do feel like side steps and backs can be a little inconsistent at times. Like, they work, especially against linear attacks, like a lot of them work, and I feel like they feel a little bit better post-patch, but there'll be moments where, okay, say you get the perfect side step or the perfect back step and the game will slow down a bit, right? Sometimes when it slows down, you still get clipped. So it's almost like the game is blue balling you. I don't know. There could be a skill issue, it could not be, or it could be the fact that when you're playing online on delay, a lot of moves that you would normally think that you could sidestep or backstep, that could also be at play. Now, when it comes to the game plan of Rebirth of Souls, in most fighting games, you get the character's health down to 0, you win or you win the round. In Bleach's case, it's a little bit different. You see, Rebirth of Souls works with a stock gauge, or I guess a kupaku in this case. And there are different ways of removing that kupaku or stock down to 0. You have soul destruction, which you can use whenever the opponent is at 30%, which by using just a keycon move, or getting the opponent's health down to 0, which leads to soul break. Now, the orange bar represents the stock that you can take during the soul destruction, and the yellow bar represents the amount of stock that you can take during a soul break. Now, depending on your fighting spirit gauge, or sometimes even your character, can determine how much stock you can take from your opponent. It varies. This system reminds me a bit of a game called Fighter's Destiny, which is like an old 3D fighter back in the N64 days. And what's unique about that game is that they also have a similar point system that depends on how you defeat the opponent, like if you do a knockdown, a throw, or a special move. I just find that to be interesting because you don't really hear a concept like that too much in a fighting game, let alone an arena fighter. Now, I want to go ahead and put out a fun fact right quick. So, a lot of people may not know this, but this game has a gut system. If you play Guilty Gear, probably heard of this before. Essentially, if your health is at a certain percentage, say about 29%, or honestly when you're in the red state, you will gain a defensive modifier to where the damage scaling kicks in, to where if an opponent hits you, you won't be dealing as much damage as compared to you being in white health. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the fight spirit gauge. Now, this gauge naturally fills up over time, but there are different ways of building it up. So you can either build it up either through spiritual pressure moves or by activating white reversal, which we will definitely talk about that later. I love this mechanic right here. Now, once your gauge is filled up to the max, you can activate evolution. And boy, when it's activated, oh, it's game time. Well, unless you're pre-patch Stark. In that case, you will be struggling. You're not struggling anymore because that buff really saved your ass. The majority of the cast post-patch, once you activate evolution, you will gain some of your lost health back, and you will sometimes even get an entirely new moveset and playstyle depending on your character. Now, in some cases, you will have stronger variations of your moves. Hell, the rate that you gain resources once you activate evolution has increased as well, along with your damage and the amount of stock that you can take away from your opponent. Now, characters like Shikai Ichigo, Stark, Shuhei, Renji, or Sajin have entire moveset changes, which is pretty damn sick. There are more things you have to take into consideration now. Once you get past the sublimation mark, you gain even more reverse gauge, and on top of that, you can take even more key com from your opponent, and oh boy, it can get dangerous. Then you have spirit drive, which is a step beyond sublimation, where you can gain even more meter for your reverse gauge. But for certain characters, they can go to their reawaken state, which is pretty much a big ass power boost. I know Uryu and Ukiura in particular can just straight up go into a brand new form, and god, they can do a lot of damage in the right hands. In some cases, as Aizen and Bankai Ichigo, they can revive themselves if they're in a specific condition. Now, most characters in the roster can play a 2 to 3 round game. If you can play a 2-round game, that's great. That means your character is already doing a good job already. Without awakening or sublimation, you probably get around maybe 2 to 3 stocks. With awakening, or in this case evolution, you get 3 to 4 stocks. With awakening and sublimation, you'll get to 4 to 5 stocks. And that's, mainly during the end game. Now, there's some characters that can go even beyond that, but I digress. Next, you have the guard gauge, which is pretty self-explanatory. The more attacks you block, the more the gauge will decrease. And well, to simply put it, you better pray to God that this gauge doesn't go down to 0. Because if it does, ooh, yeah, you in trouble. Then we got character-specific gauges, which really just depends on your character. Some characters in the roster have their own resource gauge, which is also a pretty neat thing that this game has to make characters stand out. Next, you have your spiritual pressure gauge, which is pretty much just your way of performing special moves that cost meter. And it can just be a range of different things. It can just be special attacks, it can be projectiles, it can be counters, it can be reversals. Hell, it can even be passives depending on your character. It just depends. Now, you can build this meter through just basic attacks, or you can use the reverse gauge, which leads me to one of my favorite mechanics in the game. Reverse, or just the reverse gauge in general. You see, the reverse gauge builds up naturally. All just depends on your fight spirit gauge. There are several different ways you can go about using the tool. Let's talk about my favorite way of using this tool. It's through the reverse actions. In other words, this is just Roman cancels from Guilty Gear. And as you may not know already by talking about this video, I love Guilty Gear, and I love my cancel mechanics in my fighting games. So let me just nerd out a little bit if you don't mind. All of these reverse actions cost 2 bar meter. Now, all these have different actions. For example, the white reverse or soul reverse, you can use it to mainly gain meter or to recover health. Next, we have chain reverse, which is the yellow reversal, which you can use for combo extensions, pressure, or you can be like me, like a psychopath with a unsafe normal, and they think, oh man, you can press a button thinking that you safe. Nope. Chain reverse, because if the opponent is near that shockwave, oh, it's over. You can get a combo off of them, a conversion, if you will, and it can get real chaotic. Last but not least, you have Blue Reverse, which is this game's version of defensive burst mechanic that you see in most fighting games. Then you can also use it for flash steps or ho-ho, which is 1 bar less expensive than using reversal actions, but it's a very interesting tool. See, as I said earlier, you can use flash steps to get behind your opponent, and if timed correctly, you can get a counter attack from your opponent. Now, what I didn't say is that you can use a ho-ho or a flash step as a combo ender if you really want to. Now, fun fact, if your opponent is around 30% or 29% within that red state, the knockdown is a lot longer. So if you delay your flash step or your ho-ho just on time, you can do a manual combo instead of the automated follow-up that they give you, which is pretty sick. Guys may have not noticed this already. This is a game of mids, meaning that there are no lows and highs in this game. Your main way of opening your opponent up in this game is either through guard breaks, unblockable moves, frame traps, staggering the opponent till they press a button or make a terrible mistake, with punishes, or just using breaker. You are able to combine your lights and heavies together to perform a basic combo or a basic conversion. Now, the fun thing with this game has a reverse beat system. If you play any French buried games like Under Night or Melty Blood, you may have heard this term before. You can convert your heavies into lights. That's a very cool and interesting tool because not a lot of fighting games or arena fighters normally have that. You can start off with a heavy button into a light, and that stream can be safe. Mind you, your turn ends, but that is an option that you can do, which again, I keep saying this game takes a lot of inspiration from different fighting games. And you have Breaker. Oh, let me tell y'all something about Breaker. A lot of people don't like this mechanic. Some people do. It is a very strong mechanic. Breaker is this game's universal grab that is unblockable, and as a dispatch, it is a combo starter for every character. You can either press it or you can hold it. Now, mind you, there is some in lag if you press it or hold it. It is a very strong tracking tool, and it takes priority off of a couple of things. Sometimes it takes priorities over lights when it's not supposed to. Sometimes you can use it when the characters throw out special moves sometimes, even though it can be really risky, but it's generally a really strong tool. It's like playing rock, paper, scissors, and then you got a hammer. You can delay Breaker during your light attacks to create frame traps or mix. And it's pretty fair in terms of just being able to react to it, but reacting to it in a delay based netcode, it can get a little fishy, but we'll get to more of that later. Now, when combining those options with the reversal action tool and with your spiritual pressure moves, you can create some crazy pressure and you can make some pretty cool combos. Now, some can be simple, some can be complex, and some can be even flashy. It really just depends on your character. This game isn't really necessarily a super combo heavy game, and there is a critique that people have to where it's a little bit too simplified. But I guess for me, as the game goes on and more people finding out things about their character, I feel like it's going to open up over time. Now, early game, the meter build is slow, so you're basically going to be doing basic conversions. When it gets to the mid or end game, that's when you're constantly building meter. That's when you're able to be more aggressive and really just overpower your opponent. It's simple, yet it's a satisfying system once you understand everything. Now, one of the biggest highlights for me for Rebirth of Souls is that every character in this roster plays unique from one another. And yes, I am saying that for an arena fighter. I know it's crazy. Their movement, their speed of their normals, their signature moves, their combo structure, even their pressure, to even their game plans. And sometimes they even have their own gimmicks to shake up the match at any given point. Like, this game at a certain level is just a game of matchup knowledge or just knowledge checks. There's a character for everyone depending on your playstyle. You got all-rounders, you got mid-range characters, you got zoners, hell, you even have stance characters in this game. And that is an archetype that is rare in arena fighters. A stance character? Yeah, that's the thing. Now, I know when you see this roster, you see 4 Ichigos on the screen. Most arena fighters, they tend to have characters that have like 4 or 5 different versions of that same character, and they all play the same. Well, that's not the case for Bleach, because all these Ichigos play completely different from one another. You got Shikai Ichigo, which he's a rushdown character that focuses more on melee damage, and he has some really big and good buttons. However, The biggest gimmick with him is that he can only do right reverse, but in exchange of that, he can take extra Kopaku stocks, and his spiritual moves change depending if he has right reversal action or not. And he can be very dangerous in the right hands. I'm gonna let you know that now. Then you have Bankai Ichigo, more versatile version of Shikai Ichigo. I say he has faster buttons. He's a lot more aggressive than Shikai Ichigo, and he really excels in just having fast normals and good range attacks. And in the right conditions, he's able to do a reawakening. Then you have Dangai Ichigo, which is the tankier version out of all the Ichigos. His main gimmick is that he is not able to take Kupaku or stocks away from you until he hits his third Kikon move on you. But every time he performs his Kikon move, he gets stronger, and he also gains new moves. And last but not least, you have the coolest Ichigo, which is the 1,000-Year Blood War Ichigo. He is a stance character, and he has tools and options out the ass, and he will mix you up to death until you see the winning screen. Love his combo structure, love his pressure, love the mix he can put you in. He's just great. Now, I want to talk about one character. This is the character for me. I want to spread the word, and I want more people to play him. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell y'all something about Shuhei Hisagi. Now, the thing with Shuhei is that he's a more neutral focused character. Now, in easier terms, he's just a character who just relies on space control in order to put the opponent at a disadvantage. Now, his signature, has great range. He has a discount stun dipper. You know, that's a big plus that can go to projectiles. In his base form, he's a little bit more close range. However, when he gets to that evolution state, that's when we get down to business. His heavy buttons have a lot more range, even though there is a dead zone that if you play him, you might want to be careful because you might be whiffing attacks. But his goal for him to rely on his spacing and his pokes in order to maintain the advantage. Now, the thing that is interesting about this character is his fear mechanic. So if he loses Kikon, if he takes away Kikon from the opponent, if he activates Awakening, if the opponent activates Awakening, he can gain fear stock. And that fear stock can go into leveling up special moves and his signature move, because he has level 1, level 2, and level 3 fear. He doesn't do a lot of damage. However, when he gets to level 3, he becomes a monster. His fireball becomes plus, his signature has range out the goddamn ass, and he just becomes a menace to society. In this recent patch, they recently gave him the option to gain more fear points if he throws out his spiritual pressure moves. And that really helped him out a lot because it helps get him to his game plan faster. Now, as simple as these characters are, there's enough interactions in the game to where I don't really get bored as much. So there's always something new that I'm learning. And that's something that I appreciate with Bleach Rebirth of Souls. Next, I want to go over the presentation of Rebirth of Souls for a little bit. Now, I did bring a special guest, my boy Coded. I wanted to go ahead and step up on the stage right quick because he pretty much has damn near a very similar opinion to how I feel when it comes to the presentation of Bleach Rebirth of Souls. And I want y'all to hear him out for a bit.
With Rebirth of Souls being the first Bleach game in well over 14 years, the team at Tamsoft knew they had to come correct when creating this game and capturing the essence of Bleach and putting it into game form for newer audiences, and man, did they ever do that. First and foremost, if we just want to talk about the graphics of the game, with 1,000-Year Blood War being so new, them making the decision to make that the general art direction they wanted to go for in terms of the graphics, in terms of presenting the characters and the older story of Bleach, or I should say the first beginning half of Bleach with the Soul Society and the Substitute Soul Reaper arc, reimagining that in 1,000-Year Blood War's art style was a genius decision, because if you want to capture not only older fans with obviously the story of Bleach and how much they already love that story and those characters, it'll be so easy to convert newer fans who might not even know that part of Bleach and don't want to go back and look at the older art style if 1,000-Year Blood War is their first interpretation of Bleach, making the game look just like the anime they just just finished watching. Makes so much sense to try and capture that audience and capture the newer people that are just getting into the series for the first time. On top of that, when you want to talk about the general aesthetics of the game, the uses of colors, bold contrast of colors, how they depict characters in certain lights and put them in certain angles, trying to capture them in poses that represent them similarly to how they are in like manga, and how Kubo draws, you know, certain characters like Ichigo and them on the manga covers. And when you boot up the game and you look at the main menus, you see the blacks and the sharp oranges for Ichigo or the blues for Orihime, and just how they use the boldness of colors to tell you a story without having to actually either fully draw out character faces or fully draw out, put emphasis on certain things to you, and just has the art itself tell you the story that it needs to tell without going into too much detail. It's very similar to how Kubo likes to draw a lot of the manga when he's creating Bleach, and it's very similar to how he uses colors and how he uses shadows and stuff like that. So they really looked at the manga for Bleach and tried to take everything they could from it in terms of aesthetically and creatively to try and give you this feel of like, yeah, this is a game, but it's really just the soul and essence of Bleach is still there for fans that have been wanting a game like this for so long. Seeing something like that is really going to hit to a lot of older fans of the series, but also it makes the game just look cool overall. It makes the game stand out amongst the market of other anime games in general. The one standout thing about Bleach has always been the art style and how cool it is and how like flashy it is, and it's just, like I said, it's just a cool medium to just look at. It's just cool art to look at. So representing that in the game, taking all those pull and those aspects from the manga itself, putting it onto the screen for people to play as, it has made you feel like you're just playing out actual scenes from the manga or actual scenes from the show that you already read or you already watched, depending on how you even started out with Bleach in the first place. You wrap all of that up with an amazing soundtrack that was created by Takeharu Ishimoto, which if you don't know who that is, maybe you know the games he created music for, like The World Ends With You, like Final Fantasy Crisis Core, like some of the Kingdom Hearts games, the Cydia games. Like this man is known in the gaming world, especially the RPG world, when it comes to making banger music. The moment we found out he was going to be on Bleach Rebirth of Souls, we already knew the OST was in good hands. I'm talking, when you hear songs like Yoruichi's theme, Soifon's theme, even Kai and Shiba's theme, or even going all the way to the opening movie theme, Die for Love has been on repeat daily. All of these things wrapped up into one has made the presentation for Rebirth of Souls feel like a dream come true for Bleach fans, for people that have been wanting a game like this to come out for the last decade plus. Like, as someone who's been a long time Bleach fan, just looking at this game in general, like, you can't help but get emotional a little bit because of how long it's taken for a game from this series to come, and then you finally get it, and it's something that's like so faithful and still has the soul of the series inside of it. You look at it and you see everything that you love about the series is still there in the in-game form for you. It's just an amazing feeling to have as a fan, and I think the team at Tamsoft did an amazing job capturing the essence of Bleach and putting it into this game. They did an amazing job when it comes to the presentation.
Alrighty, let's go get down to business. Let's talk about the content side of Rebirth of Souls. Starting with the story mode, which is the biggest aspect of the game. This game's story mode is lengthy, and without skipping cutscenes, you're going to be spending at least 25 or 30 hours on this story mode. And it goes from the Soul Reaper arc all the way up to the Onraka arc that leads up to Aizen at the end. And if you're fairly new to Bleach, this game covers a good chunk of it. And hell, this is one of the very few Bleach games that covers most of the source material, the majority of these arcs, all in one game. Now, does it do a good job at that? Well, it just depends how you look at it. It is an abridged retelling of the story that you've seen before in the manga and the anime. For what it is, I think it does a decent job at telling the story of Bleach. Whether it's via cutscenes, the dialogue boxes, or just the really cool illustrations that they show off in the cutscenes. And it's some really good art. Now, is it a great alternative versus watching the anime or even reading the manga? No, not even close. But it's there, and it gets the basics down, and that's something I appreciate. Now, I will admit, for the cutscenes for the game, they were definitely balling on the budget. It's not 62 levels of crazy and quality and stylish, and that's not what I really or expect. It's cool to have, but the cutscenes in this game range for being sometimes cheap, and hell, I'm not gonna lie, some of them are even pretty hilarious to look at, and some of them look fairly decent. As for the gameplay within the story, you do get the chance to fight enemies and boss stars specifically, or the story mode, with some even having their own movesets, even though they're not playable characters. With that being said, I'll admit they didn't really provide much of a challenge. Now, there are spirit talismans that you can use to help you in battle. I really didn't use them that much. And the only time I really felt like there was really some form of challenge in this story mode is when it comes to completing these secret challenges that you can do in order to unlock certain side and secret stories in the second half of the story mode. On the bright side, at least, I do enjoy these side and secret stories that the game provides. I found some of them pretty entertaining, and others actually add more content and detail that led to the events of the main story arc. Hell, there's even exclusive cutscenes that are specifically in this game that they tell you that take place after the fight with Aizen that you don't even see in the anime or manga. While it's not the greatest story mode, I think it does provide substance, and it'll keep you busy for at least 40 hours if you really want to go for a completionist run. Next, we got missions, which is this game's survival mode. You just beat up a wave of enemies and you gain awards for those runs. Now, you are able to use your talismans, and you are also able to use your soul crystals, which are essentially modifiers that you can equip your character with to boost your stats. Rather than be passives that can increase the base damage for your normals, your spiritual pressure moves, reducing damage that is being taken from you. It can be health regeneration, or it can even increase your meter. And you can upgrade these crystals, so there is that aspect if you are into it. I personally didn't play this mode as much, but it's a good time waster. Now, there is an in-game shop where you can use your currency that you earn through the story mode and the mission mode to buy crystals, stickers, and portraits for your player card. And there is a gallery mode if you want to look at your achievements, hear the soundtrack of the game, look at certain cutscenes within the story mode, or look at the glossary. Since if you go in there, you can actually learn the terminology and lore behind Bleach, which if you're confused with certain terminology in Bleach, well, there you go. Now, you do have a versus mode where you could fight the CPU or your friends locally, and you also have a training mode and a tutorial mode if you want to learn how to play the game and learn how to deal with certain situations in an online setting. The tutorial, I think it does a good job of going over the basic fundamentals of how the game works. However, I do wish it did teach players more practical ways of learning these said mechanics or establishing good practices, like learning how to punish certain moves or learning how to hit confirm, or just teaching players good strategies with specific mechanics. Maybe I'm asking for a lot, but I just think that would be a cool thing to have for those who want to learn the ins and outs of the game. And there is a training mode in Rebirth of Souls, and it is easily one of the best training modes that I have played in an arena fighter, simply for the fact that there is an arena fighter that has a record and playback function in our proper counterattack settings to test out specific situations. I cannot tell you how great that is. I have been wanting this in arena fighters in a long time, and Bleach is the first to ever really do it for me, and I'm very happy about that. Despite that being really good, I do have some critiques for the training mode. I would really like for this game to save your presets instead of resetting all your configurations that you made in the training mode. And can we please have a character specific panel for the gauges? That way we don't have to spend 5 minutes setting up your character gauge to go a certain level manually instead of just toggling it up and down. It just be a good quality of life change. When it comes to the online, oh sweet Jesus, I'll be so honest. They built the online infrastructure in this game out of sticks and stones and aluminum foil. I don't like the netcode for this game. I get it, it's delay based. It's just like most arena fighters, but it does not feel good to play in. When you're playing people with Wi-Fi in this game, it doesn't feel good. When you fight people on the yellow bar, or even slightly green sometimes, it doesn't feel the best. And I'm on Ethernet. I don't know why that's the case. I don't even like playing this game on console because the delay feels even worse. And it also doesn't help that this game doesn't have an endless or spectator lobbies. So hosting events for this game and trying to build a community or a scene for this game is genuinely difficult, because when you don't have those aspects, it makes it harder to do. And it is very frustrating. And yet people for some reason wanted to add a rank mode in the game first. I don't understand it. Now, there is rank in the game in this recent patch. It wasn't there before. It's at least a seasonal rank that exists. However, there's an infinite rematch button in the game. And since the game is, again, kind of dry, you will be coming across the same people. And there are room matches in the game, and you can invite your friends. But guess what? There is no rematch button. Why? in all these lack of quality of life changes in the online aspect of the game, it's very frustrating. It's a big turnoff for me when it comes to playing this game. Tamsoft, please work on this as soon as you can. As for the current state of the game, well, it's rough. The numbers are dwindling. The communication between the player base and Tamsoft is completely radio silent at the moment, and the PC port did not have the strongest release. It didn't work for almost 3 months, and even though it is functional and playable now in this current patch, if you play Aizen in an online match on the PC version of the game, it crashes the game. And it's been like that for 2 months. And finding matches can be a little rough. You want to get games consistently on the Discord. It's crazy I have to say that with Bleach, but that's the way things are right now. And I don't blame people for feeling frustrated and upset about the game state. How things are when it comes to anime games. They probably had to release this game at a certain time, meaning that the game was rushed and that most of the assets that they put towards this game were mainly towards the story mode rather than the online of this game. Now, despite those flaws and concerns, I genuinely think that this game is a love letter to Bleach fans, and it really has a really good foundation that can be built upon over time. But there is a niche and consistent community that constantly hosts events and tournaments for this game and try to push this game to greater heights. All we really want for this game is just feedback and communication, and just to know what is the direction of this game going forward.
Under Night Universe 2